I once did an exercise, you know, Malcolm Gladwell has this thing called, if you do something for 10,000 hours, that you're an expert. So I wanted to think about that in terms of preaching. So I added up the number of sermons I had preached, and I added up the number of hours of preparation with those sermons. And so I estimated in 31 years of pastoring that I had preached about 3,000 sermons, and then I tacked on hours. So I concluded I was an expert in preaching, except that what expert means is I've made all of the resident mistakes in the field of expertise and know how to recover quickly. So if you had to guess, after all these years, how many sermons do you think you've preached?
Oh my goodness. Probably a good 2,000.
More than that, what do you think?
Oh, yes, probably more, but I've preached many more over time, you know, more than one time, you know, that kind of thing. But
yeah, but I'm talking about it's anytime you hit the pulpit, it's a new sermon. I don't care what's on.
That's true. That's true. It comes out.
So you were doing 3 services.
Yeah.
How many years did you do 3 services?
12 years.
So that's a long time. And then when you weren't doing 3, you were doing 2.
That's right.
You were doing 2 before you went to 3.
That's right. We did that for 10 years.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then and you take, you know, revivals. And
well, if that's the case, 5,000. Yeah, more like 5,000. Add all those up, my goodness, because I'm on the road.
Right.
Every other week almost.
So, with 5,000 sermons, what have you learned about preaching? You know, that classic, you know, Caesar Cloud. What do I preach after 50 years? You know, kind of stuff. What after all that? What have you? How would you sum it up, particularly to a young preacher that may not, you know?
Well, I think we need to expect and respect the living nature of the Word. I find it constantly breathing, constantly speaking to me at different times, the same text. I find that after all of this preaching that I'm still nervous about standing and wondering if I'm going to be true to that scripture and helpful to the people. And I've this become more and more as the older I get. I mean, I will be celebrating 50 years of preaching in 2 years. Yeah, 2020. And so it's frightening, you know. It's like, oh my God, am I really being true to that? Am I being prophetic or pathetic? You know, and to be able to be a prophet in these times and spell it correctly, not P-R-O-F-I-T.
That's right.
Trying to be true to that. Yeah.
50 years and 5,000 sermons.
Yeah.
That's a legacy, sir.
Well, thank you.
That's a tremendous legacy. And you know, of course, the success of Brentwood, and we're talking more about preaching, but you know, your pastoring, your church growth, all the kinds of creative things. You were ahead of the curve in so many areas of congregational life. You know, the AIDS ministry, the things you did, you know, the residency with that. I mean, so we could go on and on about that, but we're particularly talking about preaching. But that 50 years and 5,000 sermons, you've been faithful.
Well, I've tried to be faithful. I argue that it is critical to have that passion, but also more important to have that compassion. And I see a lot of preaching with passion, but I don't see the compassion for the people. And that's been my concern, that so many of the younger preachers they love preaching and they love pastoring, but they don't like people. And so that's been probably the way I've pastored. I mean, these generations, 3 generations, I love people, and I spent a lot of time with the people, you know, but even just in the conversations and their realities, you find preaching. Yeah, I mean, this is what they need, you know.
Exactly.
You know, and so I always love that passage in Luke where it says, you know, the harvest is plenteous, the laborers are few, you know. Lord, pray that the God of the harvest would send, you know, laborers. And that's been in the backdrop of all my preaching. He went about doing good. He went about teaching, preaching, reaching. And so I just think that's where I've enjoyed being who I am.
I'm thinking of that old preacher joke, and I think I first heard it. It's ascribed to L.K. Curry, but where the young pastor's been preaching 2 or 3 years, he calls up his pastor and says, "I'm running out of things to preach. You know, what do you do when you run out of things to preach?" And the old preacher said, "Well, you know, just visit a few hospital floors.
Yeah.
You know, go by a few cemeteries.
Yeah, that's so true.
There's stuff to preach.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. And stuff that needs to be preached.
Exactly.
You know,
stuff that'll speak to you. You don't have to make it up. It's going to speak to you if there's compassion for the people.
And that I think has to be taught more. You know, taught, so that they become more effective in their preaching. You know, whether that's Amos or Tekoa or whether that's Isaiah or wherever they may be. You know, I pray hard about that, knowing where I is at. You know, and speaking to the people and addressing their needs. Yeah.